Welcome in to the Crowded Booth. My name is Bryce Koon. We thank you so much for hanging out and tuning in alongside myself, Will Manis, and Ralph Lear. We can't wait to talk with you. We're excited to talk with you as college football, spring football has continued at a lot of different places. Tonight, we're talking about the ACC, the tier rankings. Before we get into, we'll say our final top 10 teams in spring football. And then we talk, obviously, the storylines that spring football brings. But tonight, it's the ACC tiers on tonight's episode of The Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
Well, we welcome you in to the Crowded Booth here on a Wednesday evening. It is March the 12th, 2025, and in a lot of places across the country, spring football has started. Some programs are getting ready to start, but it is officially the time of the year for complete overreactions. It's completely to watch a quarterback throw a pass to a guy on air and for that quarterback to be named a Heisman favorite. And so, fellas, it is overreaction season. There's finally some content for people to talk about. I'll start with you, Will. Did the off season, if you really want to call it that, but in terms of not having anything, it kind of flew by. Like from the national championship to now, I feel like it went pretty fast. I don't know about you though.
I mean, it's what, 2 months?
Yeah, because they moved it back this year, right?
It's 2 months.
January, because the national championship was January 20th, right?
Not even 2 months.
Holy cow.
But, y'all can overreact all you want to. It's baseball season.
It's baseball season. Is it college baseball season? Is it middle school baseball season? Or is it
All
professional baseball season?
It's all of it.
It's just baseball season.
It's just
Hey,
baseball season.
77 on the grid today.
There you go. You're getting ready for a big release I guess, and then I'm trying to calculate the hours. 24
27
plus,
and a half hours.
Yeah. 27 and a half hours.
27 and a half hours. And we will never hear from Will again.
That's a big time. No, I think that I really didn't think about that. Well, it felt like it was a lot sooner, but the fact that we've moved the college football national championship to nearly, I mean, I know it's not really, but nearly Super Bowl Sunday, it definitely is. And then you have some winter workouts. You kind of have the portal that's open for, so many days. Ralph, it's nice though it's nice to just see some different stuff on the Twitter timeline. I guess I would say that.
Yeah. We shouldn't talk about some people's social media timelines today. I know someone in here who has a very interesting timeline. We're not going to get into all that tonight, but yeah, it's nice seeing, a lot of baseball, spring training highlights, college baseball highlights. You're starting to see some pro days this week. Georgia had theirs today, and I already saw some opposing fans of Georgia saying Gunnar Stockton can't throw because he was throwing in for Georgia receivers tonight. That was what he was doing, and they're saying he's a bad quarterback because he can't throw
In a pro day.
In a pro day, that's not even his. He was just asked last minute, can he throw for it?
Pro days this week. We had the NFL Combine, a week and a half ago, something like that. I mean, or I guess last week. I don't even know. That was last week. Yeah, the Combine was last week.
Staffers, if this tweet was true, did not know how to get to Athens from Atlanta.
There's no way.
No, there's no way.
It had to be fake. The story of that tweet had to be fake.
Now, can we just explain something? Can you explain, Alex, why your Twitter timeline has automatic pictures of raccoons?
I don't know. It's better than my timeline on Instagram.
Yeah.
This is from Rusty Manziel. Works with On3, does a great job. This to kind of play off what you were saying there earlier, Will. Reps in Athens today for the Falcons. They had 22 staff members and every single position coach in attendance. The next team with the most representatives was the Patriots and the Vikings with 5 each. So for the Falcons fans that have been begging to draft a Georgia player, they had eyes there. I wouldn't mind seeing Jalen Walker or Mykel Williams in pick 15 or whatever it is. So we'll see.
Mykel Williams was going top 10. Sorry.
You think so?
I think so. He
someone will reach. What's up, Bryce, Ralph, and Will? GT Faithful says, "How you doing, friend? Good to see you. Where's Ralph? He's right there, looking good as always." Okay, so we talked about the SEC tiers last week, fellas, and I think going through these tiers, we kind of have, I don't know want to say different criteria, but I don't really know what the criteria was. Just bottom
Well,
line.
I can sum it up.
What's that?
What is this conference? What
Yeah,
is what is this conference in football? What is it in basketball? What is it in football? What is this? Ralph,
Yeah,
don't throw
I
the
mean,
graphic up there. You'll make too many people mad. This is also a family show. Don't put it up there.
well, I was going to say, like, seriously, what is the ACC heading into 2025? Let's, before we get into this, I kind of wanted to hint at this because I was talking to Gavin, and this will be the standalone video for this piece. But as we've seen as we've kind of seen what the recent shaking and moving of the ACC and the Florida State Clemson whole deal that kind of happened, I guess, early last week, late 2 weeks ago. This conference to me is still on life support in terms of the grand scheme of college football. And if you're looking into the 5 to 10 year future, I still believe that. I think that this conference, and Will, we talked about this when you look at the coaches, I think it's a lot of coaches that do pretty well with not a lot of resources. Like, I think that's a theme or an identity of the ACC. And we talked about that with some of the coaches. I mean, like, I know we're going to talk about this, and I think that this team's pretty high up on each tier ranking and tier list for us. Louisville's a great example of that. Like, Jeff Brom is a really, really good job of getting a lot out of a little. And I will say, he does actually have more than he's had. I think I've said it for 2 years. He wanted Purdue, so it is what it is. But
I think
good.
Sorry, I think as we sit here on March 12th, there's only maybe 5 or 6 programs that know who they are, right? And head coaches that know who they are and what their identity as a football coach is and what their program is. Out of 16 or 18 programs, it's a third, maybe a third of them know who they are
as a program, like not just as a team in 2025. No, I mean, I think there's, to your point, and to not just rehash it a different way, but I think there's a lot of teams that are wandering, like trying to find themselves. And you're going to see it like when we get to the middle tier of the, of the conference of, wow, what a comment. You're going to see, like, when we get into the middle tier, I mean, there's very much an argument for some of these tier 3 teams to be in tier 5. Like, I don't even think I'd think you were nuts in that sense. So, what is the ACC? I like what you said, Will. It's a conference with a lot of teams that really don't know who they are as a program. And it doesn't mean they can't get there, but they're still trying to find themselves. Ralph, when I ask you what is the ACC in the most family-friendly way possible, how would you describe the ACC football conference heading into 2025?
You hit it perfectly on the nail a minute ago. Was they do a lot with not much, really. And, I even go to like Syracuse this past year. They got a good quarterback with Kyle McCord, and they had a lot of just good players, no one really elite on either side of the ball. And they just kind of did a lot with it. McCord was really good for them this past year. And obviously he's off to the NFL, and you got to, you got to replace pieces now. And this is what the ACC really has been the last few years is, occasional good elite player on each team, and then they had to replace them immediately with 2 or 3 players to kind of replace that kind of that talent. And, and I go to Florida State, you go from 13-0 ACC champs to 2 wins, 3 wins, 2 wins, 2-9,
yeah, 2-10, yeah, 2-10,
you go, that drop off is, I don't think we see a drop off like that ever again, honestly, but. What's Florida State doing this year? If they're able to piece everything back together, this conference kind of gets a little back in there. They need Florida State to be good. They need Clemson to be good, Louisville to be good, Georgia Tech to be good. Miami to be good. Like, those teams need to be carrying this conference year in, year out. And it really, it just hasn't been really those teams, 1 year they're all doing really well, next year they all do terrible, or one does terrible and two are good. It's just they can't find a rhythm, really.
Yeah. I wanted to bring this up because you were kind of hinting at this. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. I believe it was, who Reggie here, who says, I think that the ACC is in a worse spot than the Big 12. This is more of a maybe big topic conversation, but I think it's interesting because the Big 12 is just like this conference that just beats up on one another. I mean, I was going back and watching our predictions, and you looked at the preseason rankings, and what was it? The last two teams predicted to win the conference were in the conference title game.
Yeah,
like it was completely inverse. And the teams, like I think I had Utah, or I had Oklahoma State. Somebody had Utah. Like those teams were terrible. And so,
no. Let's call us out where we need to be called out. I had UCF.
Well, they weren't.
Ralph had Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Hey, but they were there at the end.
They were.
And they're looking good in the portal. Shout out Joey McGuire. But
I doubled down and said KJ Jefferson was going to be a Heisman finalist.
Yeah. Well, to that point, though, about the Big 12 and compared to the ACC, I guess I would ask, Reggie, what do you mean by the better spot in terms of respect, in terms of the playoff? Because I will say I think the ACC has the more heavyweight brand than the Big 12 does. Like Clemson's going to wield more power in terms of brand value than anybody the Big 12 can put up, unless they can start to, like currently. Florida State, just the helmet the logo will wield
Miami
more power.
Does too,
Miami does too.
Your top three do, I think, and what they should be.
Yeah,
I guess you'd say.
Your top three brands, right? Like we can all say Clemson, Florida State, Miami are your top three brands, and UNC's in there too because they just are such a big brand. I don't know. I think that's an interesting claim because, and Will, I saw you were kind of nodding in agreement towards, I guess, Reggie's comment here, but in terms of on the field play, like, is the Big 12 deeper? Is the ACC have more? I'll say this: does the ACC have more playoff potential teams, but the Big 12 is just deeper in terms of they're all really close together? I mean, I was reading some stuff like NIL wise, there's not a lot of discrepancy in the Big 12 programs. Like they all spend around the same, and so it really is truthfully almost closest to an even playing field you have probably at the Power 4 level.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think simply because you have like more of a clear-cut favorite in the ACC. I mean, Clemson, year in, year out, you expect them to be there.
Yeah.
At the end, and you win your conference, you're in the playoff. It's that simple. Whereas the Big 12 is wide open. I think, when I compare conferences, I like to try to compare the worst teams of every conference and see how they stack up. And the bottom of the Big 12, to me, is better than the bottom. It's much better than the bottom of the ACC. But I can understand that's not necessarily a fair comparison because your Stanfords, your Wake Forest, at least in 2024, they can't compare to the Big 12. But that's normally how I compare conferences. I say, could the worst team in the ACC beat the worst team in the Big 12? I don't think so.
Yeah, so to back up your point real quick, this year it's kind of weird. It's two big brands. Oklahoma State, who went 0-9 in conference play. Dear God, that is wild.
They beat Arkansas after being blown out in the first half.
3. Yeah. But to your point, let's take away those two big brands. Does a 2-6 in conference Stanford, they go 3-9 overall, are they going to, and just on paper, like, and just without doing tons of research, are they going to beat a UCF or an Arizona? I don't think so. So I'm with you. I think the bottom half of the Big 12 is stronger, but I do think the ACC has more brand value and more heavyweight teams. And I use that term lightly because I don't think there's a ton of heavyweight teams in the ACC, but I think Clemson carries the big club there.
You think about brand value. I mean, Clemson, that is self-made brand value. Miami, that's historical brand value. You look to the Big 12. I mean, if you want to compare those, I would say Utah has built up their brand. Under Kyle Whittingham. Iowa State has built it up. I mean, there's not a historical power really in the Big 12 anymore. I mean, you've got, think back historically, Texas Tech was big on the national scene under Mike Leach for a handful of years.
TCU under Gary Patterson for a little
TCU
bit.
under Gary Patterson. I mean,
Kansas
Arizona
State
State and
under Bill-
Arizona. You think about like
Gary-
90s.
Hey, Bill
I mean,
Snyder.
in the 90s,
Kansas
those two programs were really good.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the Big 12 it's fun. It's not to take anything away from the Big 12. I think it's a fun conference. There's not a lot of crazy. Stanford has tons of brand value. Yeah, but I guess I want to say this. When I say
We're
brand
talking
value, I
about,
mean
like,
in college
athletics.
football, like athletics. Stanford doesn't have brand value in college football like it once did when it had McCaffrey and Harbaugh and the early days of David Shaw, Luck,
Jim Plunkett.
Love.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. It's interesting. Louisville would be a top 3 team in the Big 12. Our boy FNB Quan says,
I would agree.
I agree.
I'd say Louisville's arguably a top 3 team in the ACC if you want to get into arguing semantics. But yeah, I think it's interesting. Nico says, sure, but that's the same thing as Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma State and Stanford are wildly different if you're comparing the two. Like wildly. Oklahoma State had a bad year last year, but they're consistently a top 5 team in the Big 12.
Quarterback.
What is that? Yeah. Well, Will, would you like to speak to their quarterback?
He left, but he still needs to get a job.
Get a job.
GM Andrew Luck bringing Stanford back. Yeah, he's the GM of the Stanford football team.
That is a solid hire for them, by the way.
That's crazy. That's awesome. It's no Toby Gerhardt, but I think it'll do.
Who do you want running, being the GM of your program, Andrew Luck or Toby Gerhardt? I don't even think that's a discussion.
Oh, it's not even close to one.
Yeah.
No, not even close to one. It's Andrew Luck all the way. But no, to that point, good question there, Reggie. I think it's interesting. So what is the ACC? Well, it's interesting. It's chaotic at times. And I think, and truthfully, not trolling, Will, because don't laugh. Will, you literally did sum it up. It is a team. Well, both of you guys did a great job. Will says it's pretty much a league where you have, well, Ralph said it's pretty much a league where you need some teams to be consistent. Like you need Miami to be a consistent 8 to 10 game winner over the course of like 6 years to really establish themselves as what they are. And I don't know. I think this conference is interesting. 2025 is going to be a weird year. I do still fear for the future of it because you're not making a lot of money in terms of that. And I really, really, really do. I really, really do. I will say this, like, as much as we joke, we talk SEC, ACC here on the show, like, I do like the ACC. It's fun to watch. I just wish that this conference would have better leadership and would have been more forward thinking at the time. Matt says, too bad that Calvin is too busy growing the jazz cabbage to care about being involved in Georgia Tech. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
I've never heard it get called that. That's hilarious.
That's wild. That's crazy. I'll be honest with you. If you want to say something like that again, you're probably going to have to get Dono to be able to put stuff like that on the board. So that being said, any final thoughts on kind of what is the ACC?
No, I'm not saying it.
I think it's best if we don't get into that.
I agree. That's
fine. All right. So without further ado, now here's how we're going to do this. Make Herb the ACC Comish. Oh boy. Charlotte legend. So without further ado, here's how we're going to do this. We are going to go through our tiers, and then we're going to give our dark horse, way too early dark horse ACC candidates. And man, I've got mine locked and loaded. So there we go. All right.
I mean, close your eyes and just point
to tier 3 and find something. I mean, yeah,
where you are.
It is. All right. So without further ado, I believe that I am first. So here we go. No, I'm not. Will Manis is first. So Will, here
actually.
No. Just keep it there. We'll just go back through it. For the audio listeners, Will, just read out your tiers real quick, and then we'll get into the discussion and talk about them.
Yeah, so entering 2025, I have tier 1 as Clemson and SMU. Tier 2 is Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Miami. Tier 3 is Duke, Boston College, and Pitt. Tier 4, Florida State, North Carolina, NC State, Cal, Virginia Tech, Syracuse. And Tier 5, Wake Forest, Stanford, and Virginia. It's funny. Obviously being the how do we put this in a family friendly way? I guess we'll say my strong allegiance to the SEC. Thinking back at making that tier list, there was certainly more biases there. And this one is really just kind of strictly football. Like, how did you finish 2024?
Yeah.
What have you done in the winter, transfer portal, winter recruiting, which is getting rarer and rarer, and that sort of thing. And also talking about the identity of these programs. You look at those tiers 1 and 2. I think those might be your 5 programs that know who they are. Pitt probably does know who they are, but they've had so much turnover that it's hard to say they know who they are. Duke and Boston College, again, they will have second-year head coaches. I think still leaning more toward figuring out who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the offensive side of the ball. They both are going to have new quarterbacks that they didn't have a year ago. And that's why Florida State's down in tier 4. I mean, it was a disaster of a season, 2024. The roster needs a lot of work. They're basically having to use the same strategy they used last year, which is rely heavily on the portal and overhaul it. It didn't work, so I'm hesitant to say, yeah, they're going to be so much better. I think we all kind of learned that lesson.
Yeah.
Lesson last year. Just to touch on UNC, what is UNC going to be under Bill Belichick? I mean, we've already seen he's done some of his Patriot stuff, during spring practices. They're not going to have numbers or names on their practice jerseys, which I think is very interesting.
Love it.
You go back and watch it on film. You really got to know your roster if you're going to do that, and know those guys. And really, the biggest bias in this entire tier list has to do with Cal. I like Justin Wilcox a lot, but he made, I think, a dire mistake hiring his new offensive coordinator, Brian Harsin. That should. I could go on and on. Justin Wilcox might be getting a big check to go hang out on the beach after this season, making a hire like that. But it's trying to place these teams where into tiers. I think is really difficult because like we said, the gap between tier 2 all the way down to tier 4 is really pretty slim. I think, and it makes it difficult. You've got some established head coaches in there that have underperformed and maybe not done so well in the portal, which causes them to fall down the list. But it's really tough to try to figure out really who slots where.
Yeah, I think that when you look at, I mean, I don't really have any issues with yours, but I did like what you said. The only comment I have is between tiers 2 and 4, like tier 5, they're bad. And I'm the only program I feel like that can climb out of tier 5 is Wake Forest, because new coach, maybe there's an influx of excitement. I haven't looked a lot of Wake Forest, so that's it. But Stanford, I don't know what you do. In Virginia, I think Tony Elliott's a dead man walking. Like I don't know. They've got to make, and they are going to enter, and I'm dead serious about this. They're going to enter Georgia Tech territory 3 years ago if they keep rolling with Tony Elliott, head coach.
Whoa, wait a minute.
Not on anybody's radar.
I think they're already worse than that.
That's also fair. That's also fair. They might already be there because the Virginia schools were kind of this sense of pride in the ACC, and Robbie Ashford's going to get them out of tier. Oh boy, talking about Wake Forest. I think Virginia's a complete afterthought. Like I don't even think anybody thinks about them on a national scale anymore, and that's kind of what happened to Georgia Tech from 2019 to 2022. So yeah, I mean that's real. No, I'm good with that. Will tiers 2 through 4, very slim margins. Well,
I mean, I truly don't have anything wrong with it. I mean, I think mine's not, if not similar, but close to it in some aspects. I mean, I might be higher on a few things, and he might be higher on some different things, but it for me, NC State really just relies on what CJ Baxter can do this year. Honestly,
that's true.
Like if he plays as well as he can, I think they can jump to tier 3 at least.
The biggest thing is he's not going to have the security blanket that's Casey Concepcion.
No,
and so they're going to have to find some other receivers. But to your point, like it's CJ Bailey, I believe. Bailey is he's a dynamic athlete. We saw that in the Georgia Tech North Carolina State game. for sure. All right, so
I should address this.
Go ahead.
I mean, we should probably all talk, at a bit of length about Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech is tier 2. I think Georgia Tech is right there on the cusp. They're one of those programs that know who they are. I mean, you think Georgia Tech football, you think a hard-nosed team that is going to play like their hair's on fire on both sides of the ball. They're going to run the football. They're going to be physical. That's who they are, and that's what Brent Key has turned them into. I think that goes a long. Just knowing who you are, I think, goes a long way. Whether or not you're going to have success, back-to-back years in a bowl game, like you said, Bryce, that 3-4 year stretch just was honestly pitiful. They're primed and ready to take the next step. We'll see if they can do it. I think the transfer portal was really kind of killer. I mean, I think it's really going to hurt them. I mean, and you look at what's coming in on paper and try to compare it on what is going out on paper. But maybe I think you look at the net. I think it's a net negative for Georgia Tech, the transfer portal this year. But like I said, they know who they are. I think both sides of the ball, the coaching staff, they've done a really great job maximizing what they have. And, I think they're ready to take that next step. So I've got them in tier 2.
I'll talk about them in a second because we'll go mine next. We'll go you, Ralph. But I think to your point about the transfer portal for Georgia Tech, it's really one of those things where if they could have kept like 2 or 3 of the guys they lost, then you're talking about. I mean, you legitimately can talk about them getting to Charlotte. Like that. That's a team that could get there.
And people will probably be surprised to hear me say this. I think Romello Height is the biggest loss that Georgia Tech had. I would expect most people think I would say Eric Singleton. I think it's Romello Height. I mean, to have an elite pass rusher like that, looking at Tech's roster, I don't know that they really have a guy that can step in and do what Romello Height did last year.
Height wasn't otherworldly. I think it just provided stability. And maybe that's what you have to. I think the biggest thing, Will, to your point, is like they're going to have to count on like a young guy to just rise to that level of veteran play, which is just it's not even necessarily on the field. It's like understanding the game, and maybe it happens, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, because they got some good kids. Like they got the kid from Mercer who was a FCS All-American, but it's like, do you know, like Romello Height to me wasn't a super high ceiling player, but he was a pretty high floor. Like you kind of knew what you were going to get.
Yeah, and it's like, how does that translate? That's a big jump. I mean, it's like, oh, it's FCS. It's only one division down. No, it's a big jump. And even
especially going from FCS to the Power 4, like that's almost a double jump.
Right. Yeah. So we just have to see. I mean, I think rushing the passer, it kind of seems like more and more, at least to me, it's natural. I mean, you can either do it or you can't. I mean, you can teach it, you can teach the technique, but it's like, unless you've got a guy that is physically gifted, has the size, the reach to do it, and can do I don't know, but I don't know how to coach football, obviously.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like it's natural. Romello Height is a great pass rusher. Can you teach somebody to rush the passer like that? I'm not sure.
It's similar. I like it. All right. Well, Ralph, I'll hit the little left side button, and then we'll have to skip to get to yours.
That's fine.
Here's mine. Different, more change in terms of what you had. So for the audio listeners, I'm going Clemson by themselves in tier 1. Tier 2, I've got Louisville, Georgia Tech, Miami, SMU. And by the way, I don't know how you guys did it. I'm not saying that Louisville's the closest team to getting to tier 1. It's more of just straight across the board. I think we all follow that measurement there as well. In tier 3, I have Duke, Florida State, and North Carolina. Tier 4, I've got Boston College, Syracuse, North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, Pitt. And then tier 5, I guess I was looking ahead to maybe what Brian Harsin could do to that program, and I put Cal alongside Virginia, Stanford, and Wake Forest in tier 5. The couple things I wanted to hit on here, there's 2 programs in tier 4 that had some really good success, but I think they got a lot of question marks. And Syracuse, for me, is one of those. you play an incredibly difficult schedule. We talked about that about a month ago when the ACC schedule came out. And you've got a lot of names to replace, like big names, big players that you were able to hit on year one that you got to go find. So I'm curious to see how Fran Brown does it. And I've said multiple times, like if Fran Brown can get to a bowl game in year two with the amount of turnover they had, the 1 year stopgaps they had in year one, I think that's a win for Syracuse, like football in general, like getting to 6 or 7 wins, especially with the schedule. And then North Carolina State is another one. And I kind of hinted like what you were talking about earlier, Ralph. With CJ Bailey, I mean, dynamic athlete. They lost a lot. Kind of feels like a make or break year for Dave Doran. Like if they don't get back to where they felt like they needed to, could they go look for some breath of fresh air if it gets really bad? And then Pitt. I was looking more into Pitt, okay? And I know we don't do that a lot on this show, but I was looking into Pitt, and Eli Holstein's a good quarterback, and I think we all had him. I think we all had him in our top 5 or around top 6, 7 quarterbacks in the ACC.
We all had him top 5, I think.
Yeah, I think we did. I think we did. So with Holstein, he gets hurt last year, but they lose 6 straight games to end the season. I'm concerned about that. I think that if they lost like 3 out of, like, you lose your quarterback, cool, but when you lose your starting quarterback, you lose 6 straight. I think it shows how propped up they might have been by just the play of Eli Holstein. I do love their offensive coordinator, Cade Bell. Very great mind, young and upcoming mind on the offensive coaching staff and across the country. So we'll see how that works. But that's tier 4. I don't have a lot to say. I mean, Virginia Tech, Boston College is what it is. Tier 3 and tier 2 for me. Well, let me go back to tier 1. I think Clemson's by themselves, and I wasn't ready to put SMU in tier 1 solely based off the fact of you did it for 1 year. And it was awesome. It was a fun year. Like we sat here literally a year ago and said, hey, this could probably happen. And it happened. And I do think obviously they benefited from not having to go through the gauntlet of, I mean, they still played some good teams. Like they had to go to Louisville, and that was a good win for SMU. But they didn't have to play like, Miami, and they didn't have to go play Georgia Tech. They didn't have to go play Clemson. So that definitely aided their ability to get to Charlotte. But I think now it's like you're not surprising anybody anymore if you're SMU. Like they know who you are. They know you got money to spend. For the people who lived under a rock and didn't know that SMU had money, now you know. Like they're going to be able to do some things. So I've got SMU in tier 2. I put Miami in tier 2 just based on the fact they're going to consistently have the money to compete. Is Carson Beck in for a bounce back season? Which feels weird to say because he actually had a pretty good season on paper. It's just in some big moments he wasn't great. I got Georgia Tech in tier 2 because, I mean, it just feels so weird for us to talk about Georgia Tech and feel like we have to defend our positive takes about Georgia Tech. But
we hate Georgia Tech. I mean, I don't know what you want me to tell you. We hate them.
I hate them. So I think the thing with Georgia Tech for me is, you're what, 14-12 over the past 2 years under Brent Key. But the thing is, you have found yourself. And like what you said, Will, that has to matter so much in terms of what you are as a program. Like literally knowing who you are, for better or for worse, is way better than some of these other programs. And it's why I think Duke's pretty close to being in tier 2. I would need to see them make a jump. But like the other 2 teams, Florida State and North Carolina, I think there's promise because you have money, you've got backing, but I don't really think you know who you are. I don't think you really have an idea, especially Florida State. Like I think that is a complete like schizophrenic situation. Like I don't think they know what's going on in Tallahassee with all the and you said, Will, earlier, you said they're gonna do what they did last year. Let's make it 3 years in a row. Like 2 years ago it worked. Last year it failed miserably, and now you're counting on a new OC, largely a new offensive coaching staff. Herb Hand is the offensive line coach there now. Gus Malzahn, the offensive coordinator, and Thomas Castellanos.
Cut him. You can let me rant about Gus for just a minute. You can look Gus Malzahn's career on a line graph. When he brought Herb Hand to Auburn, it started to take a sharp decline because he took him with him to UCF and he took him with him to Florida State. No, I'd already talked about him.
No, you brought up Harsin. You didn't say Auburn. I had to bring
the word. So
yeah, you gotta say the word.
And then I've got Louisville in tier 2. I feel like Louisville, and this might be a hot take. Out of the teams in tier 2, I think that Louisville has the highest floor because I think it's going to be. It would really shock me to see Louisville go like 5-7. Now, do I think that they're going to make Charlotte every year? No, but I think that they're constantly going to be in the conversation in the month of November. And I just think that they are, out of the teams in tier 2, they probably know who they are the most. Like Jeff Brom has been coaching long enough. We love Jeff Brom. This is a Jeff Brom show. We love that. So I got them in tier 2. And then I kind of talked about tier 3 with like Duke. I love what Manny Diaz has done. They could they're another potential dark horse candidate, I think, for some people if Menza really hits and they take another step defensively. But yeah, that's kind of where I sit with that, and I went through it. So, any questions about any of that, or any kind of piggybacking off that info? No.
Nope.
I don't think so.
All right. So once again, also go again. Tier 1, Clemson. Tier 2, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Miami, SMU. Tier 3, Duke, Florida State, North Carolina. Tier 4, Boston College, Syracuse, North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, and Pitt. And then Tier 5, Wake Forest, Stanford, Virginia, and the Fighting Brian Harsons. I think Virginia's the worst team in the ACC. I'll say this. I think Virginia, I'm more mad at Virginia than I am Stanford. I expect more out of Virginia.
Absolutely.
That's why. So, it's
Absolutely.
a joke. All right, Ralph, you're up, pal.
All right, I'm going to go. So tier 1, I have Clemson and SMU. Tier 2, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Miami. Tier 3, Duke, Florida State, Pitt, Syracuse, Boston College. Tier 4, Virginia Tech, North Carolina, NC State, Cal. And then Tier 5, Wake Forest, Stanford, and Virginia. I'm not even going to discuss Tier 5. There's really nothing.
We've all talked about it.
It's just nothing to say, though, truthfully.
That means those 3 teams will all make a bowl game this year.
Good. I have the over on their wings. Tier 4. I kind of have a different criteria, I feel like. It's tier 4 teams I expect to be better this year. Even though Cal had a pretty good season, even though it didn't look good on record, they had a really good year, I felt like. And competed in the majority of the games they played. Lost some close ones they should have won at the Miami game. Should have won that one. NC State, really just a sour season last year with injuries and just not playing the potential. I had them hit by dark horse at ACC, and just terrible. North Carolina, obviously Matt Brown just had to go, and it was time. And you go get Bill Belichick, you get a guy who's won a ton of football games, man, a ton of games. A guy who knows the game better than anyone probably right now in college football, I'd say. Now it's not. I know he's not saying he's not a better college coach, but he's a better overall coach. I mean, the dude's been coaching for so long.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech. I don't think they're one of the worst teams. I don't think they're on tier 5 level, but they could be. They might be this year if they drop. My tier 3 is just really just kind of like it's the big. You can be really good or you can be really bad this year, because that's why I have Florida State tier 3. Because I expect a really a drop or a completely change this year out of Florida State. If they're not an 8 to 9 win team this year, they're going to tier 5 and they're staying there until they win a national championship, in my opinion. Because if you go 2-9 or 2-10 and win 4 games this upcoming season or less, there's some things need to change in Tallahassee. Yeah. Something's gone completely wrong there, and it needs a whole culture change. Duke, I think Manny Diaz is a good coach. Bryce already said it earlier, or Will said earlier, this is a second-year coach. Can't really just, I can't put them anywhere higher than 3. I think they're a good team. They got a good quarterback coming in. It's just what can they do offensively? They're going to have a good defense. Manny Diaz knows what he's doing defensively. I just don't know what their offense is going to look like with Mensa at quarterback. I'm higher on Boston College. I think Grayson James under Bill O'Brien's a good quarterback. I really do. I just think he has a higher upside with Bill O'Brien and a full season with him. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to be a 7-8 win season. It's a 6 or 7 win team this year for them, but obviously I think they deserve a little more because they've lost a lot in the last few years in the portal and just get poached completely. But I think Bill O'Brien's going to do good this year. I know we joke about him a lot. Tier 2, I'm just going to go ahead and hit it. Yeah, I have Georgia Tech tier 2. We all do. Congratulations, Georgia Tech. You finally made it up there. I completely agree with what Will said earlier about Georgia Tech. Everything's spot on. I'm with the Romello Height thing. I think Eric Singleton's still the bigger loss, just for what he put up numbers wise for them. Defensively, Romello Height was a factor because you had to make sure you know where he was on the field. But I just don't know if Tech, there's not one guy can replace Eric Singleton. I don't know if they got a guy to replace Romello Height either. I know you can't. It's hard to teach that. It's hard to teach what he did this past year for them, and it's hard to win games when you don't have all your talent on the field, and that showed this past year when Haynes King was not playing. If Haynes King's fully healthy, every game they have a solid chance to win, no matter who it is. In my opinion, they give themselves a better chance to win a game with Haynes King at quarterback. If it's not, I don't feel as confident for him. And there's no knock to who's playing quarterback, but Haynes King is just a guy who wants to win more than anybody else out there. He will put his body on the line to win a game, and that's fine. But that's who you want at quarterback if you're Georgia Tech. Miami, it's Carson Beck, going to be the guy to help you out this year and get you another 10-win season. I don't know. I truly don't know much about Miami this year. They lost some receivers. They lost their quarterback. The defense is okay. It's just they're either going to score a lot of points or they're just going to get beat. They have to. That's all they're going to win games this year. I feel like Louisville is in tier 2 team for me because Jeff Brom is a quarterback whisperer, and he now has a good quarterback, in my opinion, with Miller Moss. A guy who actually knows what he's doing. I think he's a quarterback that actually has talent, who has good arm strength, and can get the ball out there a lot faster. Now, I'm not saying not Tyler Shaw and
Plummer.
Jack Plummer.
Yeah.
Because they did some pretty good things in those two seasons for Louisville. I think Miller Moss has a higher ceiling under Jeff Brom. And I expect
he wasn't a loss.
Yeah, he's not
a loss. To the USC fans.
Yeah, the USC fans, Miller Moss is not a loss. Forgot about that.
We're at the kids' table.
Yeah. I just expect more out of Miller Moss this year with Jeff Brom as his coach. I truly believe he can be a better quarterback for them this year. And I'm not going to speak much about Clemson because y'all both did. They're a clear-cut favorite in this conference, and they should be. Heisman, my champion for the Heisman is Cade Klubnik this year, preseason. I think he's probably the best quarterback in this conference easily. We all have him at number 1 for a reason. Returning his last year easily is there's a high ceiling for Clemson. They want to make a run for it this year, and I think Klubnik can take them that far. And SMU, man, look, pony up always. Kevin Jennings returning. I think we got a full year of Kevin Jennings. They bring in some pretty good transfers actually. You look at that port. I brought some help on the offensive line, defensive line, the secondary. I brought some linebackers and a running back from Miami and Chris Johnson Jr. Mm-hmm. I really like SMU's offense this year. I think it's very explosive again, and I think their offensive line is a little bit better than it was last year. They got some guys from Arkansas. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I had it up here a minute ago. Now I've already pulled that page now, but
Addison Nichols.
Yeah, there you go. I think that SMU kind of didn't. They obviously lost some talent. It's not really a full restock, but it's a reloaded kind of offense and defense where they can still be a competitive ACC opponent.
Yeah, they'll be competitive. I mean, the schedule's harder, right? Like SMU's schedule's gonna be a little more difficult. Am I penciling them into the ACC title game? I think you'd be crazy to pencil any team in outside of Clemson into the ACC title game. That's how crazy this conference is. And even then, I mean, Clemson, we got to remember, kind of backed their way into the ACC title game, even to get there over the last course of this couple seasons. So, yeah, Ralph. I mean, I like what you said about just going back to Louisville.
I mean, the conference schedule is not much harder, in my opinion, for Clemson or for SMU.
What is SMU's schedule?
I mean, they play East A&M, Baylor, Missouri State. That's a tough one. That's a sneaky tough one for some reason.
Missouri State is a pretty good FCS team.
At TCU, that's a tough one. Then you got Syracuse, Stanford at home, at Clemson, at Wake, Miami at home, at Boston College, Louisville at home, at Cal.
You probably have one more harder game. Like they didn't have a game where they had to go to Clemson. I mean, their closest one was probably Louisville last year.
Yeah, and they play Louisville at home this year. You go to, playing out of your comfort zone. You're going to Boston College in probably toward the end of the season. Yeah, it's going to be a little colder up there, so out of their comfort zone from they normally are.
Yeah, I'd say 9 to 10 wins.
There you go. Going back to Louisville, they only get 4 starters back on defense, which will be something to monitor in the spring. And obviously, you don't really know what you're going to get. But remember, they also added Isaac Brown. They got Isaac Brown in the backfield. But I like what you talked about with Miller Moss, because Moss is still super toolsy, right? He has what it takes to be a good quarterback. I think, Ralph, and when we look across quarterbacks in the transfer portal, he might be the definition of a change of scenery guy. Like, he just needs to get out of USC. And I'm not saying Lincoln Riley's a bad quarterback coach.
That's got to be the most toxic fan base and place to be, in my opinion. Southern California, for that university, with those fans, that's got to be a toxic place to play.
I can think of pretty toxic fan bases.
Oh, I know, but I'm saying that's got to be one of the top 10 easily.
Yeah. I don't know, I think so.
Ralph by himself makes Troy a toxic fan base.
There you go. Hey,
Clemson's got to watch out week 2. Clemson better watch out week 2. We're coming.
It's trap game, man. LSU goes up there.
Yeah, you went.
They were part of a 4-way tie for the best basketball team in the conference, and all year Ralph said they were terrible.
It's the mind games, Will. It's the mind games.
Ralph made me turn off the Troy Georgia Southern game when we were on the way to Mobile.
He said, "Get that out of here."
We still won that game by 10 points. Hey, Sunbelt Conference champions, though. Let's go ahead and say it.
There we go. All right, dark horses for Charlotte. Who it is? Who is it? So you only get one. Okay.
You go first?
It had to be our tier 3 or lower for us.
No. We did that for the SEC, I think, because we did. Well, real quick. You think about it. I'm going to go over to our friends over at Bet Online, and I'm going to pull up our odds. Okay, so we'll get that. We'll get this looked at real quick, because I think that is something that I don't want to say could determine, but could definitely.
Well, I kind of want to see the odds also, because I feel like there's a difference in the clear-cut favorite, obviously.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
So Clemson is plus 225. All right.
Jesus.
Miami is plus 250. This is to win it out, win the whole thing, to win the conference. Yeah. So keep that in mind when we do this. So let's see here. Miami's plus 250, Louisville plus 475, SMU plus 500, Florida State plus 1,200, North Carolina plus 1,200, Georgia Tech plus 1,200, Virginia Tech plus 3,300, Duke plus 3,300. I'm going to give you mine. It's Georgia Tech. If they figure out the defense, like I like Blake Gideon, but if they figure out the defense, I put them in Charlotte plus 1,200. I would take that. I'd throw $50 on it, see what happens.
Check cleared.
Check cleared. No, I can tell you there's no check there cleared. They barely could pay me when they needed to. So that guy doesn't work.
I'll go next. I'm going to take Duke.
Plus 3,300. You can make some fun money with that.
Yeah, with Mensa coming in at quarterback. The number to me, I don't care what 24/7 ended up saying at the end. I think Mensa was the best quarterback in the portal. He's a true difference maker at the position. I think he's a playmaker. I think he could make enough plays and win some games that Duke probably shouldn't win. Sorry, I got distracted by the comments. I like Duke with Manny Diaz. The defense is going to keep them in games, probably overachieve a little bit, I think. I think they definitely did that in 2024. And, major upgrade at the quarterback position. You bring in a guy is it a stretch to say he might be in the top 3 of quarterbacks in the ACC?
Mensa?
Mm-hmm. I guess it is. We already talked about them, but
Well, I was gonna say we didn't put him there,
top
but,
five. So
but I mean, I think we all talked about like he's a guy that could definitely play as. I mean, he has the ability to be a top
we
five.
just got to
quarterback.
see him in this level of competition. That's the only thing.
Yeah,
I'm not saying there's no knock to what Tulane plays in. They're playing probably the hardest G5 conference easily. That could be a low key of Power 5 conference.
yeah.
Maybe just a lower tier one. Knocking out some of those schools would make it a lot easier. But I don't disagree with that, Will. That's not a hot take. It's up there, but it's not a hot take.
But plus 3,300 for Duke. I mean,
that's to win.
That's to win. Like, what is it? I don't know what
we're
it's
talking about to make here.
I don't think I don't think you look at that. I don't think that's a odds kind of thing.
I'm certainly not picking Duke to win the ACC. I'm certainly
I'll
not.
say this. Think if it's plus 3,300, it's probably what plus 2,000 to make. If it's that low, right?
No, it's probably
it would be reversed.
It's probably like plus 200.
Yeah,
250.
If you're plus 3,300 to win it, it's you
won't have longer odds to make it than you would to win it.
Well, Ralph said 2,000, which would be 3,300. 2,000 is less than 3,300. So,
I'm stupid.
Yeah, I was thinking plus 330 because of how we worded it. Will left. No, but seriously, I think that I'll say this, and I wanted to talk a little bit more Georgia Tech because I just kind of said it. Georgia Tech has, I mean, I talked about this on a podcast earlier this week. They've got the quarterback. They've got the running back. They got to find a running back too. They've got to find a way to replace, and Will love this, Eric Singleton in the aggregate. They've got to find a way to find the production somehow from there. Offensive line's got to step up. The defense has to take a step. If they do, they can go to Charlotte. And I think with Will was saying, like, defensively, you feel like under Manny Diaz, you're going to have a pretty decent floor defensively. Having a quarterback, this might be crazy. I just think Duke and Georgia Tech are such comparable programs. If Duke would have had a better quarterback last year, I think they could have done a little bit more. Murphy just left a lot to be desired. He's still super raw. Menza could really, I don't know. Menza could be fun. So I've got Georgia Tech. Will is rolling with Duke. Ralph, you want me to read you some odds again, or you got yours locked in?
I got mine pulled up.
All right, here we go. What you got?
I'm not going to pick with the top three. So that would be Clemson, Miami, Louisville. I'm just going to go down. I'm going to SMU plus 500.
Just to make it?
Yeah.
Does that qualify as a dark horse?
It's not in the top three. If you took Georgia Tech, I'm not going to take Florida State. I'm not taking North Carolina because I don't know what they got this year. I just don't know. If I go any lower, I'm going North Carolina State and Duke and Cal, and I don't feel safe with that. I just
stand on business and take Virginia then.
Just stand on business, Ralph.
My question is how does Virginia have better odds than Boston College, Wake Forest, and Stanford?
Virginia has better odds to win over Boston
15,000. College. Boston College has 15,000. Wake Forest and Stanford both have 30,000.
Wow.
I'm still saying SMU because I don't know if I want to go any lower than that. Because I mean,
you're just not feeling ballsy tonight. I understand it.
Don't care. It's my dark horse choice.
So
they're my dark horse last year. I'm gonna go with it again, right till they die. Right.
Well, who's your dark horse last year in the ACC? Was it NC State? You picked NC State to win the ACC outright, didn't you?
He did.
Yeah, I think. Did I?
I don't remember. That was a wild time. ACC should be fun, though. I mean, it really is. We'll obviously learn more about the teams over the course of the spring and obviously getting into the summer if there's any transfer portal additions needed. I mean, I think that's going to be something interesting, too. These teams, the rosters can change. Like, they are very, very, different. Matt said y'all were high on NC State last year. Yeah, I mean, look, I thought Grayson McCall would translate pretty well. I thought Dave Doran was a good coach. Casey Concepcion was a legitimate weapon.
I had Clemson.
What did you pick NC State for?
Make the playoff.
The title game pick. I had Clemson, NC State for the title game.
Okay.
Y'all, but you had Miami, Florida State. Will had Clemson, Florida State. I had Clemson in North Carolina State. Will and I both picked Clemson. You picked Miami.
Chalk.
Brutal. Just brutal. All right. We appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and continue to talk in the Discord and join us for college football conversation or any sports conversation all day, 24/7, all day long. The corner bar has been popping lately. It's by far the most popular chat room that we have on the Discord. So very interesting. I see Reggie just decided to make an interesting comment, and that's wild. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see what happens. And we'll talk to you next time. He is Ralph Leary. My name is Bryce Koon, and that's Will Manis. We'll catch you next time here on the Crowded Booth. Yeah, hit that like button. We'll see you later.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth.